Magandang araw po. Ako po si Joey Bakiran, ang kasalukuyang direktor ng UP-ICW. Welcome po sa 11th Interdisciplinary Book Forum na proyekto ng UP Press, tutulungan ng UP Press at UP-ICW. Dito po ay tatalakayin ang mahalagang paksa na ilathala sa anyo ng libro at ito ay isang pagkakataon upang magkita-kita o mag-usap ang mga eksperto at representante mula sa iba't ibang sangay ng karunungan, mula sa sining, social science, sa agham, upang pag-usapan ang mga kontemporanyong paksa na napakahalaga sa buhay natin. Hindi lamang po ito isang pagtuon sa literatura, kundi pagsasanga sa mga kaalamang may kabuluhan din sa buhay natin ngayon. Ngayon po ang ating librong pag-uusapan ay inakda ni Seto Poblador, ang Strategy in the New Age of Capitalism. Maririnig po natin kung paanong makapagtutulungan ang negosyo at ang pangangalaga sa kapaligiran, sa mga stakeholder na hindi lamang ang overriding na layunin ng profit ang mahalaga, kundi ang pangangalaga sa ethical na pamamaraan dito sa itataguyod ng negosyo. So, welcome po sa ating talakayan ng mga eksperto sa paksang ito. Maraming salamat po.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gio Villanueva, and I will serve as your moderator for today's event, the 11th Interdisciplinary Book Forum organized by the Likhaan UP Institute of Creative Writing. We will be talking about the book Strategy in the New Age of Capitalism, Collaborative and Inclusive Approaches to Value Creation by Niceto S. Poblador, published by University of the Philippines Press. We will be having 4 speakers this afternoon. Each speaker will be given 10 minutes to share their insights about the book and how it relates to their respective fields. In keeping with public safety protocols, the forum has been moved to an online platform. This forum can be streamed through the official Facebook page of the UP Institute of Creative Writing. To start, let me introduce to you our first speaker. Our first speaker is a Filipino economist who has done research on rice economics, land reform, poverty, hunger, income inequality, quality of life, governance, and public opinion. He also co-founded the Social Weather Stations, the Philippines' leading institute in quality of life monitoring, opinion polling, and survey archiving. Our first speaker, Mr. Mahar K. Mangahas.
Good afternoon. The real setting here is that, for me, is that I'm a former student from long ago, about 60 years, of Professor Nick Poblador, my good friend from so long. And this book we have been waiting for a long time to come out from UP Press. This is where the science has come to in analysis of the firm, economic analysis of the firm. And you will see here in this book that there's one overarching figure or teacher behind this, and that is Professor Milton Friedman, who was Nick Poblador's teacher and who also became my own teacher at the University of Chicago 50 years ago. One of the most famous economists ever, actually. And what I want to talk about him, because I just don't want there to be an impression that Milton Friedman was some kind of a ruthless profit maximizer, you know, everyone for himself kind of man. He was a great teacher, a great economist. And even his very appearance, there's his picture over there, is very short, only about 5 feet tall, and so was his wife. And when he would walk around with his coat sleeves too long for his fingers, even, he looked like nothing less than one of the 7 dwarfs. I'm sure that he would appreciate the standpoints of Nick Probador stated in this book and would not disagree with any of them at all. Because the book of Nick is not about how to be a ruthless profit maximizer. It's about how to do good in business, as an entrepreneur, in a company. In these days where doing good means doing many things at the same time and doing good to all of your partners, not doing good for yourselves, for your owners, but doing good for your workers, your customers, your suppliers, everybody all around you. That's what this book is all about. And I just don't want Milton Friedman to come out as some kind of a villain in this book, because he was not at all a villain. Actually, my most favorite memory of his is when in the middle of his lecture, or at the beginning of the second part of one of his lectures, because it was a very long lecture, there was a coffee break in the middle, I asked a question which showed that I did not understand anything about the first hour and a half of what he said. And he looked at me and smiled, and you wouldn't believe it, he did it all over again. He repeated everything in the first half of that hour. Of course, in a different way, so that it might be more easily understood. He did it in a different way, but he went to exactly the same material. And I understood it. And at the end of that session, all of these Americano classmates of mine came around mobbing me and thanking me, because they said, "We're so glad you did that, because we are all too embarrassed to make it clear that we didn't understand it either. And you were the only one who dared to ask the question." But I didn't understand. Look, Professor Friedman explained it again so that we would know it, right? Okay, he won the Nobel Prize. But it wasn't in this field of the theory of the firm. For that, you could go to another professor, Professor George Stigler, who was also one of our teachers in the same school. The contribution of Milton Friedman is in 3 books. A Monetary History of the United States. That's what we call macroeconomics in Chicago. It's called money. It's not called macro. It's called money. And the other part, the micro, is called price theory. You either do price theory or you do money. Those are the 2 foundations of economics. So as I said, his main research was a monetary history of the United States. But even more important, and this I recommend to everybody, you don't have to be an economist to read these things. One is Capitalism and Freedom. Capitalism and Freedom. And the other one is Free to Choose. This is a collection of his opinion pieces, which anybody can understand. Free to choose. Free to choose. Freedom is actually the main theme of his work. And I think we're doing it also here too. And I'm one of the co-founders of the Foundation for Economic Freedom in the Philippines, and I'm probably the only one of the group who's been a personal student of Milton Friedman himself. Such a kind man. So he's not a dog-eat-dog businessman or something like that. Just a very, very kind teacher who taught us so well, taught Nick Poblador so well, and has brought the field so much further, that Nick Poblador could bring the field even further in this new book called Strategy. It's a tribute, actually, to the teaching of Professor Milton. So that's all I really wanted to say. Milton Friedman is a hero, really, for teaching us about, personal freedom also, because in those days, the big debate was really about which is better, the capitalistic system or the planned system, the free system or the system where the government tells you what to do. And Milton said, he made his choice. He said, I prefer the capitalistic system because it makes me more free than the planned system. And that's his legacy. That's his great legacy. Cheers to Milton, our great teacher, Nick Poblador's teacher. And Nick was my teacher, so I got a double teaching of Milton Friedman. So I'm very happy to say this in memory of the great Milton Friedman. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Mahar K. Mangahas, and for the trivia about Mr. Friedman, your professor. Before I introduce our second speaker, I would like to remind everyone that you can follow Likhaan through their social media and website. It's www.facebook.com/upicw and facebook.com/panitikan.ph. On Twitter, follow them at Likhaan and at PanitikanPH. Likhaan also has a dedicated portal for literary news, free literature, and events. Check out their website at panitikan.ph. Our second speaker is the Executive Director of the Filipinas Copyright Licensing Society, or PhilCols, the only collective management organization in the book publishing industry accredited by the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. Under his watch, PhilCols grew from 8 members in 2009 to more than 700 rights holders on April 14, 2015, PhilCols received recognition as a finalist in London Book Fair's International Excellence Award for Copyright Protection. Aside from local engagements, our speaker made presentations on publishing and copyright issues before CMO events held in Argentina, Indonesia, Japan, Norway, Slovenia, South Korea, Thailand, the USA, and the UK. Please welcome our second speaker, Mr. Alvin J. Bonaventura.
Maraming salamat, Gio. And now I'd like to share my screen. What made the quarantine bearable for many people? For some, it is the presence of family members or the connection to friends via social media. For others, it is the spiritual connection to the divine via online religious activities. But for many, it is the consumption of creative works. Like most people, I consume created works. I watched Squid Games, We Are All Dead, The Witcher, Money Heist, 13, and He's Into Her, among others. I also played mobile games and Asphalt 9 and Mobile Legends also, just so I'd know what the millennials are playing. The first to be affected by the lockdown was the creative sector, and according to CSAC, or the International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers, the creative sector will be the last to recover. This pandemic put a stop to public performances, live events, movie screenings, concerts, art exhibits, and other large-scale gatherings. And yet, the creative sector led the drive to support others who lost their livelihoods. For example, our local musicians generously performed online concerts just to raise funds for those who lost their livelihood. For example, ABS-CBN's Pantawid ng Pag-ibig raised 400 million pesos, Bayanihan Musikahan 122 million, Gary Valenciano 6 million, Regine One Night Only 4.2 million, and Sharon Cuneta 2 million. And since these were all for charitable purposes, music was not paid for. So nakakatuwa po na maisip na ginagawa nila ito. So among all the art forms, music was very active. And this pandemic also allowed me more time to read, especially na nasa book publishing industry ako. And I enjoyed the latest offerings from Mil Flores Publishing, Nick Joaquin's Rizal in Saga, A Life for Student Fans, and Charleston Ong's White Lady Black Christ. And so I gladly accepted the offer to read Dr. Niceto S. Poblador's Strategy in the New Age of Capitalism, Collaborative and Inclusive Approaches to Value Creation. I am not an economist like our esteemed Dr. Mahar Mangas, but I'd share some of the points, the lenses I got from this book to examine the Philippine book publishing industry. This is our framework, and this is the basis for my reflection for this afternoon. The global publishing ecosystem is divided into three parts. Primary use is when the consumer bought the book, and after it was launched by the author and publisher. Upon buying, the consumer is presumed to have used or consumed the book, whether she or he reads it or not. Later, the author receives the royalties after the publisher deducted their costs. The second level, we have secondary use. This is when institutional users like schools buy copyright licenses from a collective management organization like us for the reuse of portions of published books and other materials like newspaper articles, scientific publications. How are they reused? Through photocopying and digital copying. And after deducting our admin costs, we distribute the remuneration to our members. Lastly, the last part is the fair use provision in our law, which is a limitation to the exclusive rights of the author. Under fair use, our end users may reproduce or copy a fair quantity without asking permission from the author and paying for it. In the Philippines, the amended IP Code directed the Book Development Association of the Philippines to craft the fair use guidelines for classroom use. BDAP is the oldest and the largest book industry association in our country. They determined that using up to 5% of a book is fair use. Beyond that, and up to 20%, end users like schools should get a license from a CMO. What is a CMO? A CMO is an organization of authors, publishers, and heirs of authors. Our members assign the reproduction rights to us. We do not charge membership fees. We are accredited by the IPO Philippines, and we are also a member of the International Federation of Reproduction Rights Organization. We signed our first license under the Aquino administration for the reproduction of copyright materials for its K-12 program. Things changed under the Duterte administration. The Department of Education released Department Order 18 Series of 2020. This includes the blended learning strategy of the government as a response to the closure of schools and to face-to-face classes. Teachers were ordered to create self-learning modules, use all available materials, physical and online, and reproduce them on a large scale. DepEd's order halted the procurement of textbooks and other learning materials from the private sector. The Philcolls agreement was also shelved. The book publishing industry lost up to 60% of its income, or 3.6 billion, from the closure of schools and this DepEd order. If I may go back, during the Ramos administration, the public school textbook market, which is larger than the private schools, was privatized to allow our Filipino publishers to grow. We have RA 8047, or the Book Publishing Industry Development Act of 1995. This ushered in the privatization. For DepEd's orders, they circumvented the law. Since Philcolls was not remunerated, we were not able to distribute to our members. We had our first distribution in 2013 after our agreement with DepEd. Brother Amin Luistra was the secretary then, and in this picture you'll see Dr. Jimmy Abad, one of the founding members of Philcolls and the head of our distribution committee. The author presented here is Egay Samar. Our first distribution was held at the Buluagang Recto before it was burned. And Philcolls was also able to locate Damiana Eugenio, the mother of Philippine folklore. In this photo, I took this photo, she was bedridden and had a bad fall at the age of 93. When I told her that DepEd already paid for the use of her works, ang sabi po ni ma'am, mabuti nagbabayad na ang DEX ngayon. Dati kuha lang sila ng kuha. DEX pa ang tawag ni ma'am, hindi DepEd. So they've been really, the DepEd is really disrespecting the rights of others for a very long time. But I'd say DepEd's order is also a violation of the Berne Convention, which is an international treaty. So they did away with the first and second level and declared everything as fair use. Respect for human rights is also found in Article 27.2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It states that the moral and material interests of authors of scientific, literary, and artistic production must be respected and protected. But DepEd was not the first to violate an international treaty, copyright and human rights. Marcos did it ahead in 1977 to score points with students and teachers. He issued Presidential Decree 1203, which is the compulsory reprinting of domestic and foreign textbooks due to its exorbitant price at 35 pesos. This presidential decree resulted in the proliferation of photocopy shops with the accompanying justification, mahal kasi ang libro. Marcos said the same thing in 1977. Despite the passage of our Intellectual Property Code, students and teachers continued to follow the sad legacy of Marcos. This was taken at UP Shopping Center, bago rin po siya masunog, and the guy there is John Willy Rudolph. He's the executive director of Copinor, the CMO in Norway, and he said, why are these people calling their venture blessings when what they're doing is stealing from others? And he was amazed that the names of the professors were all posted at this photocopy shop. And then 2 months later, we went to Oslo. I was with our national artist for literature, Virgilio Almario, who is the founding chair of Philcolls. We signed our agreement there with Mauritius, and we were also shown this stack of course packs reproduced for Norwegian schools, but with proper remuneration to copyright owners. While Blessings Copy Shop in UP sends cakes to teachers, Copinor sends checks 3 times a year to Norwegian authors. So to resolve the the issue with DepEd, we engaged with the different government agencies. And of course, lastly, we engaged with the House of Representatives, and they conducted a special investigation, mainly to focus on DepEd's newfound legislative powers. So they investigated this issue. DepEd explained their position. The chair of the committee, Congressman Tov de Benicia, reminded DepEd to respect copyright and stop circumventing the law. The saga continues, hindi pa po ito tapos. The latest meeting of PhilCalls with DepEd was just last month. So through the book of Dr. Poblador, I was also able to look at the weaknesses of the book publishing industry. This is from the other side. DepEd is our main market, and from the other side, let's look at the publishing houses in the Philippines. They operate like political dynasties because they're controlled by big families. There is low awareness for copyright among authors, publishers, even the heirs, and sadly, even among our legislators. Our rights holders are also disorganized. And I can say that Sir Joey Bakiran was also instrumental because we met for the first time with Ime Morales and Bebang Si at the Faculty Center to organize the Freelance Writers Guild of the Philippines. So our visual artists also are not organized in the country. Ito na po ang aking last na slide. So what are my recommendations? I only have one recommendation. Dr. Poblador cited the pandemic as by far the most catastrophic in its overall impact, not only for business but for the whole of society. Perhaps the next edition of the book should include the impact on Philippine businesses of the sanctions imposed by our favorite empire of the United States of America to weaken Russia. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.
Thank you so much, Sir Alvin Buenaventura. Before I introduce our third speaker, I would just like to inform everyone that Likhaan has also has an ongoing call for submissions. The Life Update Student Literary Contest is currently on its third round. The deadline for this round is on May 15, 2022. And until May 31, 2022, Likhaan is accepting submissions to the Dex Machina or Machina, Philippine Literature in the Time of COVID-19, and the Madrigal Gonzalez Best First Book Award in Filipino. Stay tuned to Likhaan's socials for more literary events and calls. Our third speaker graduated Bachelor of Arts in Organizational Communication from the University of the Philippines, Manila. She finished her graduate degree in Educational Management at the same university and is currently a supervising research specialist at the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, working on education policy research. Our third speaker, Ms. Lei Marus Sinsay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Sir Zio, for the introduction. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to share perspectives on education and research. So I was introduced as sharing perspective for policy research, but I would like to clarify that I'm an educator. I'm actually a teacher. So the perspectives that I will be sharing will be related to education in the context of the book that we're reviewing. So before COVID happened, everyone was talking about automation, artificial intelligence, digitalization, basically the fourth industrial revolution. But then COVID-19 happened in 2020, and then there were lockdowns. And then we saw actors, leaders, world leaders testing positive. So in short, COVID-19, the virus itself was indiscriminate. It knew no class, it knew no economic status. And as the lockdowns happened, it gave society a chance to rethink, to pause, to recalibrate our strategies, our policies. That if a COVID-19 virus is indiscriminate, shouldn't society be as well? So that would be the main point that I would be sharing now, since it's also the main point of the book. So inclusive value creation. Okay, so as COVID-19 affected everyone, we saw that pre-existing conditions and the recent pandemic is not just COVID-19 itself, but inequality. So we saw how, as the lockdowns happened, we were bombarded by terms such as comorbidities, inequalities, pre-existing conditions. But what we have to take note is that the pre-existing conditions are not just those of the physical, hindi lang yung mga asthma, yung mga sakit sa puso. Inequalities that we should recognize are the inequalities of privilege, of social status in our economy. Even testing itself, the testing for COVID-19 became a privilege. And let's admit it, even the vaccinations at first was a privilege. And then in the book, this is directly quoted from the book, that the world's richest 1% was proven wealthier than the rest of the world combined. And we can see that this is a crisis in the statement itself. And in the book, it was shared that we are facing one of the biggest crises since the World War II. Not just economically, but because of COVID-19 as well. So, na-aggravate palalo because the pandemic happened. And it affected everyone, the consumers, the workers, the businesses, the society in general. So, consumers are suffering from high pricing, poor quality products. Workers are suffering from low wages and poor conditions. Businesses are suffering from unfavorable terms, especially the small and starting ones. And our society in general is suffering from environmental degradation. So basically, everyone is suffering now, all equally detrimental. Be it you're a consumer, you're a worker, you're a businessman. Everyone is suffering, and our society needs fixing. And the transformations in the book is a good way for us to revisit and rethink our strategies in our society nowadays. So the strategy in the new age of capitalism, collaborative and inclusive approaches to value creation by Sir Seto Poblador, offers us ways on how we can transform society now. So we can pay attention to the keywords that we can see here. Collaboration and inclusion. So that's what I want to emphasize here in the lens of education, since sabi ko nga po ako yung isang teacher. So first is, the main point that we have to see is investing in human capital. So before we had a product-oriented society, so we are selling products, but later on as technology progressed, we invested on human capital and transformed tayo to a knowledge society. And how do we do that? For us to invest on human capital, we have to invest on education. So the human capital theory asserts that formal education is necessary to improve the productive capacity of a population. So cliche man na education is the key to progress, to development. Totoo naman po siya. Okay? Because when we increase the value of education, we increase the value of our people as well. Okay? And I'm sorry. And as education is not a basic need. It's a right, but it's not a basic need. So makikita nga po namin, familiar naman tayo siguro sa Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Hindi basic need ang edukasyon. So before we make education accessible to everyone, of course, marami tayong mga kailangan i-address, especially in a developing country like ours, the Philippines. Because the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted this as well. Na yung mga inequalities natin, it's not just about the virus, it's not just about lockdowns, it's about our society. So ayun nga po dito. For a family whose town is deprived of electricity and paved roads, inequality is a pre-existing condition. We switched to digital overnight. Nag-work from home tayo, nag-school tayo from home, but not everyone had that privilege. So nung nag-switch tayo to this new normal, marami po tayong naiwan. And if we would not address that, of course, mas hindi magiging sustainable and productive. So that's what a good point in this book that I agree, really, the inclusive value creation. So kailangan inclusive tayo lang. Because if we do not become inclusive, hindi tayo magiging sustainable. So hanggat may naiiwan, it's not sustainable. And also, the parallel of this book to Sustainable Development Goal 4, since I'm a teacher, I'm really an advocate of this goal. Inclusive and equitable quality education and promotion of lifelong opportunities for all. So ito yung pinaka-parallel ng libro para sa akin bilang teacher, that we promote inclusive quality education for everyone. And the sad thing is, meron tayong saying na the purpose of life is to be happy. But then it's a double-edged sword because when you make something a goal, parang pag mo siyang bucket list, ibig sabihin wala ka pa nun, di ba? So parang pag ang sinabi mo na, ay gusto mo maging masaya, ibig sabihin hindi ka pa masaya. So the sad thing here is that we're making quality education a goal, which means that we don't have it yet. So personally, I long for a time that we do not set these goals anymore because we already have it. And lastly is valuing people in general. So the transformations in this book really is close to heart as an educator because we are focusing on value creation. So from profit, we transform it to value. That it's not just about money, it's also about investing on people, valuing people. And then from competition, we have to transform it to collaboration. And we have to invest on our education. So the transformations that we have to do, I'm running out of. Okay, so from people to profit. So that's one of the things naman mentioned in the book that made capitalism not working now because we focused on profit. We neglected all the parts that makes the system work, especially the people. So valuing people over profit because let's face it, capitalism is built on the foundation of competition. But we have to highlight that competition hurts the vulnerable, especially in times of crisis. So the ones who are underprivileged will be left behind, and it's not sustainable. It's not inclusive. Okay, so value over profit, collaboration over competition. So we saw this in the time of lockdown. May mga private companies na nagpapasweldo pa rin even though the workers are not reporting to work. So it's possible. There's a possibility of collaboration between businesses to value people over profit. And then next is sustainability over philanthropy. So let's face it, minsan yung mga CSR naman is just for PR and marketing. So we have to focus as suggested by the book as well on sustainability. We have to not just do good, but do well. So, and then let's focus on human capital, on educating people, on empowering people, and putting value on that human capital over the financial and the physical aspects of every business. And then lastly, so ito yung pinaka magandang point ng book para sa akin, that we have to think that since capitalism is built on the premise of competition, of the survival of the fittest, and it's not working anymore, hindi na siya inclusive, hindi na siya sustainable. So we have to rethink our strategies in a sense that from survival of the fittest, we have to do it in an inclusive way, surviving altogether. So we have to go back to the foundations of this book: collaboration, inclusion, value creation. So transforming profit to value, competition to collaboration, philanthropy to sustainability, and lastly, valuing people above everything else. So that's it for my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sensai. Your insights are closer to my heart, of course, because I also was an educator working close to students in public schools. And to introduce our our fourth speaker is an anthropologist currently teaching graduate studies at Ateneo de Manila University and Philippine Women's University. He is interested in theories of culture in the contemporary world and in the role of rationality in modernity. Our fourth speaker is Dr. Raul Vertiera.
Okay, hope you can hear me now. Magandang hapon. This new book by Niceto Poblador is an easy and readable introduction to contemporary capitalism, particularly in a time of rapid transformation, both societally and technologically. Will the old form of capitalism survive this period of change, or will it have to significantly reorient its functions, practices, and purposes? Poblador argues that capitalism must change if it is to survive, and he offers useful suggestions to ensure its survival. Most important is the notion that business has wider responsibilities than it has to its owners or shareholders. Rather than seeing business as primarily concerned with maximizing profits, Poblador sees it as part of a large community of mutually interacting and co-producing agents. While business was always part of a wider community, for example, consumers, suppliers, competitors, it never took their interests as relevant to its continued profitability. In this sense, business was a monological ego concerned only with its own ends. Poblador argues that business must develop a notion of dialogical interaction, where its own interests are shared with others in dialogue. In other words, business must see its own survival as codependent on mutual understanding and concern with others. Max Weber, the great sociologist of modern society, predicted that while rational action was the driving force of modernity, it would result in the ultimate disenchantment of contemporary life. Weber's notion of the rationalization of social life destroys the very foundation of a meaningful existence. The loss of religious faith in secularization and the disenchantment of nature threatens the basis of a meaningful ontology. Existence, life, suddenly finds itself drifting in a void, lacking in purpose and significance. This paradox of modernity, with its material prosperity but spiritual emptiness, has plagued contemporary scholars. According to Jürgen Habermas, Weber's notion of rationality mainly referred to its instrumental capacities. Rational action could indeed produce almost limitless effects in the natural world, including depleting the very resources needed for its future survival, i.e., environmental destruction, which we are facing now. Instrumental rationality is highly successful in achieving its aims, but it is unable to provide a meaningful life mode within which to enjoy its material prosperity. According to Habermas, this was because Weber's notion of rational action involved a monological agent concerned only with its own interests. Even in the case of strategic rationality, such as playing chess, for example, which involves social interaction, the first kind of instrumental rationality doesn't involve social interaction. It's only ego trying to achieve its ends. In strategic rationality, the interest of either party is entirely monological. Therefore, Habermas suggests that we need a notion of rationality which takes the interest of all the agents involved. In communicative rationality, all the agents agree on truth claims, true and false, as well as moral and social norms. Naturally, before agreement is reached, agents engage in practical or theoretical discourse to arrive at a mutual understanding. Habermas claims that language is naturally oriented, its telos, to reaching a mutual understanding. Language connects us to one another and to the material world. Returning to Poblador, capitalism, following the analysis of Weber, Durkheim, and Marx, is based on the notion of a monological agent acting to maximize his or her interest. What is needed is a notion of business recognizing its social embeddedness and therefore seeking benefits for all stakeholders, not only shareholders. This even includes cooperating with former competitors after acknowledging that competition is not the only way to ensure profitability. In a complexly intertwined world, cooperation rather than competition is the best strategy. In the new economic order, information and human adaptability become the most important factors in production. The knowledge economy and communicative competence become valued assets best served by opening and sharing resources. Growing complexity and increasing unpredictability require sophisticated capacities for adaptability and transformation. This cannot be achieved by former approaches of managerial control or earlier policies of human resources, which assume that knowledge is best achieved hierarchically from top down, rather than upward through horizontal and egalitarian channels. Hence, business must undergo a radical democratization for it to survive. Poblador gives many examples of firms that have adapted to the new conditions of capitalist production. These mainly include new ventures such as Uber or Grab in the Philippines or Jollibee, but also more traditional firms such as Ayala and San Miguel. Their success depended on creative predictions of consumer needs such as Apple and Netflix, or by reorganizing existing companies to encompass a wider range of products through takeovers. Their success heralds the possibility of a more adaptive and socially responsible capitalist future. So far, I largely agree with Poblador's argument that business has to reorganize itself radically in order to survive in the new global order. It has to be more socially engaged and attuned to the informational and communicative age. But can this transformation come from within business itself? Can a business view of the world realize its limited perspective of a complex and rapidly transforming world? A sociological perspective may present a different reality. A book called Disorder and the Disinformation Society critically examines the basis of order in the so-called information society. As societies become more complex, requirements for stability, maintenance, and reproduction also increase. A critical component of system maintenance is the production, dissemination, and integration of information. This is particularly significant in the so-called information society, where access to information constitutes the basis of order. But a problem immediately arises. Who controls, guarantees, and implements information as the basis of order? The main argument advanced by the authors is that information always and necessarily produces counter-information or disinformation. This contradiction occurs at all levels of the production, dissemination, and integration of information. Poblador's arguments are generally consistent with the sociological views above. I present more details in my published account. My only caveat is that internalist perspectives of capitalism cannot adequately capture the relationship between the system and its environment. The telling example is Poblador's expectation of trust as a requirement for business to survive. Trust is often in short supply, not only in the Philippines, but also globally, and is partly the cause of the crisis of modernity. In the recent COVID crisis, COVID-19, trust has become a crucial element in accepting vaccination. Filipinos in rural areas often prefer traditional curative practices, but even some educated Filipinos distrust the effectiveness of vaccines. There was a full-page advertisement in the Inquirer a few months ago or last year, obviously written by highly educated Filipinos. These are not provincianos with little education. So there is a small but significant middle-class component that distrusts vaccination. In fact, I think the medical person columnist in the Inquirer often doubts the effectiveness of vaccines. This distrust is shared even in developed societies such as Australia and elsewhere. We've seen demonstrations in Europe, in the US, all over by people who object to vaccination. The rejection of traditional structures of trust is just another example of the disruptions brought about by informationalism. All I'm saying really is that the information society produces its own contradictions. Thank you very much. Salamat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raul Pertiera. Before we move on, I would like to acknowledge the man of the hour, which is the author of the book we are discussing today, Sir Nick Poblador. Good afternoon, sir.
Have been unmuted. Yes, what can I do for you?
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. I would just like to acknowledge the presence of the author of the book that we are discussing today. I would just like to thank you, sir. The book is very insightful. I have read the book already before this day. I wish that I would be able to get you to sign a copy for me.
Don't worry. I'll be very happy to do so.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. My takeaway in this discussion this afternoon is that the world has been facing an economic crisis, and we have been exposed to it by the COVID-19 pandemic. So it is high time for us that we address the risk that is evident now, which is unequal access to resources and opportunities. This is causing the huge gap between rich and the poor be wider. The book that we are discussing today offers strategies to address the challenges brought about this crisis. It offers a framework for a new age of capitalism where value is maximized and not just the profit. So moving on, we would like to thank everyone who tuned in to the 11th Interdisciplinary Book Forum. Likhaan aims to continue improving this forum, and the audience's opinions are highly appreciated. Now I invite our speakers to join me for our question and answer portion. On Facebook, our participants on Facebook may send your questions to our comment section. You may send your review through the feedback form provided in the comments and caption. Certificates may be requested upon completion of the form. Okay, now we have the first question from Raymond Ruedas. In the Philippines, since the pandemic, rates of joblessness never went down below 3 million. The highest minimum wage rate in the Philippines barely hits 50% of the living wage. Gasoline prices are at an all-time high. How relevant are the new strategies that the book offers in solving the worsening Philippine economic crisis? What can it offer against more cheap labor exports, institutionalizing gig economies, and reinforcing import and export dependence? Anyone who would like to answer our first question from Sir Raymond Ruedas? Okay. Let me, kung okay lang po na mag-Tagalog, no? So, for the sake of our viewers din, na mas comfortable na marinig ang mga sagot nyo sa wikang Filipino, I encourage the panelists, the speakers to answer in Filipino as well.
Alam mo, Gio, ako Kapampangan ako kaya hindi ako masyado mag-Tagalog. Pero susubukan ko, no ha? Yung tanong ata may kinalaman sa mga manggagawa. Okay? To begin with, my book focuses on the microeconomics of labor, not the economic policy of labor. But nonetheless, what happens at the micro level has implications for economic policy regarding labor. One of the recommendations of my book for strategy is to compensate workers higher than the minimum wage. Now, this seems to be counterproductive to many of us. Pero sa pananaw ko, if you pay workers more than what they would earn elsewhere, yes, then they would tend to be more productive in your organization. They would tend to be more loyal, and they would tend to be more reliable. And this would, in the long run, contribute to the profitability of the firm. Reliable, productive workers must be paid more than, to be reliable and productive, workers must be paid more than what they can earn elsewhere. In addition, they must be provided with a healthy working environment, right? A culture that encourages collaboration and sharing among workers and between workers and managers, right? So that is the role of workers I see at the micro level. Maybe at the macro level, the government should, initiate higher wages for workers, right? In order to make them, to make their lives more comfortable, and therefore making them more productive, right? Highly paid workers are productive workers. Low, underpay your workers and they will underperform. It's as simple as that. Yun lang ang masasabi ko. I hope I have satisfy the curiosity of the one who asked the question.
Thank you, sir. It is seldom that we are able to talk to the author of the book that we are discussing. So thank you po for the insights. Question number 2 is from Acid Egg. And the question goes something like this. Multi-million companies have rigid structures that continue to prioritize profit over people and unfortunately profit over planet. On a policy level, how can we moderate companies who still continue with the old unsustainable business practices? How can we pressure them to shift their business models to the strategies that this book offers? This question goes to all of our panelists po, no? Kung sino po yung gustong sumagot, feel free to open your mics and answer the question po.
Good afternoon. I feel like I'm obliged to answer since I'm for policy research. I'm for PIDS. For that question, I think like what we do in PIDS, Philippine Institute for Development Studies produces policy notes and discussion papers, and we pitch that to policymakers, to the House of Representatives. And the research that we do, we base it on books like this. And the government has the mandate to provide a framework for the economy to work. So, kahit anong approach yan, whether it's a capitalist society or whatever ideology we follow, the government has the mandate to provide the framework for businesses. So it's really up to the leaders, to the government. But for us, like the research bodies of research agencies of the government, and for us policy researchers, we do consider books like this, like Sir Poblador's book, and then we suggest policy recalibrations to our government, but it's up to them if they would implement it or not. So I know.
A comment.
Yes, sir. Go po, Sir Mahar. Go lang po.
Para sa akin, essentially, ang kailangan natin lahat ay isang philosophy of generosity. Diba? Generosity. Think of others all the time. Think of others. Okay. But you cannot force the people to do that. Right? You can't force it. I think what Nick Poblador is showing here is that he has many examples of companies who are successful by being generous. They're being innovative. They're thinking of others. Do that. You know, be innovative, be like that. But you cannot force it. Okay? Yan ang problema is wag pipilitin. Okay? In fact, to me, this is the Friedman teaching. Ang pinakamalaking problema ay yung mga restrictions para hindi makagalaw ang mga tao.
Correct.
You see, alisin mo yung mga yan para makagalaw tayo ng husto. Ha? Yung mga for example, yung mga DepEd or na masyadong monopolistic, okay? Para makagawa tayo ng husto at makatulong tayo sa mga iba, mas simple yung tatanggalin mo yung mga restrictions para hindi makakagalaw. Those restrictions are actually selfish. Doon ang selfishness, yan ang opposite ng generosity. Yung mga wag hayaang mag-import, you know? Eh di anong mangyari? Yung konti na may import privilege, siya lang yayaman. See, all of those little restrictions are really sources of power. You see? Sources of power. The fewer the restrictions, the more free we are to do what we like. Huh? But just show that show that you're trying to do it. Show the good examples, show that they will be successful. Okay? Show up the ones who are selfish. No? And don't patronize their products. Yung mga ganon. Okay? That's the only way you can fight them. Ako, I don't buy anything from China anymore if I could help it kasi bakit pa sila tutulungan? Tulungan natin yung mga tumutulong sa atin.
Thank you, Sir Mahar. No? This next question actually comes from me po, personally, because I have experienced working in the business industry, BPO to be exact. And yung klase po ng sistema na meron tayo sa BPO ay masyadong mahigpit. When it comes to people, limited lunch breaks, pero maraming overtime, and so on and so forth. And then, for me, hindi siya makatao para sa akin dahil masyadong robotic yung galaw. And then, maririnig mo yung mga boss mo na kapag na-late ka ng konti, ang laki ng lugi sa kumpanya. So, kailangan bawiin mo to. Kailangan mag-overtime ka. Kailangan meron kang KPI and so on and so forth. Mag-election na po tayo sa Monday. And mag-iba na tayo ng admin starting July. Do you think ready na ang Pilipinas na mag-ship ng or mag-mandate sa mga businesses na palitan yung models nila? Ready na po ba tayo for that? Kasi mainly the Philippines is a capitalist society po eh. So, ready na po ba tayo to be more people-centric rather than be based more on profit?
If I may answer, Sir Gio. Una, yung comment ko kay Dr. Poblador regarding sa increase ng salary, na dapat ay mabigyan beyond minimum wage yung ating mga workers, and ang kanyang ayon sa kanya ay kapag ginawa ng isang business establishment ito, magiging mas loyal at mas productive yung worker. So I beg to disagree because there are large corporations in the country. Pwede ko ba silang banggitin? Bawal, na malalaking kumpanya. Because I know them personally dahil meron akong relative na nagtatrabaho sa isa. Yung isa ay bangko, yung isa naman ay nasa real estate. So malalaking korporasyon sila. And yun yung complaint na sinasabi nila sa akin na they are not paid properly. They're in comparison to perhaps other countries, given their responsibilities and the things that they're bringing into the company, they're not really paid that much. No, ito ay matataas na hindi ito mga pangkaraniwang manggagawa, and yet they're loyal, and yet they continue to work for these companies. No, so yun yung una kong comment. Yung pangalawa, pag ba nagkaroon tayo ng bagong administrasyon ay magbabago ang mga korporasyon na ito, ang malalaking business companies na ito, or in my case, yung mga may-ari ng mga publishing companies na may hawak na halos 80% ng negosyo ng paglilimbag sa Pilipinas, magbabago ba sila? I don't think so. Because ang next in line nila ay yung kanilang mga COO or children of the owners. And as I've said, there's a low awareness for copyright. Copyright, by the way, is moral rights and economic rights, which is enshrined in the Universal Declaration. So respect for copyright is respect for the right of the author to place his or her name on the book. And number two is the right of the author to earn a living or to make something from the book that was published or for any creative work. Yun lang, dalawang lang na yun. No? And this is disrespected because priority ng mga publishing houses ay yung profit. But they are, sadly, Sir Dr. Mangares, they are big fans of Milton Friedman in the wrong way.
No, but that's not Friedman. That's not Friedman. You're taking his name in vain. Hindi yan ang sinasabi niya.
So they stop on profit now. The profit is the end all and the be all of our existence. So, para sa akin, kahit magpalit siguro yung administrasyon, sila pa rin yung nakaupo Unless magkaroon tayo ng widespread na siguro dapat ipabasa natin yung libro ni Dr. Poblador sa lahat ng mga may-ari ng mga kumpanya, no? Para magkaroon ng pagbabago.
Tayong lahat ay dapat mag-reform. Individually, like that. Walang big brother diyan na gagawa yan para sa atin. I think from Nick Poblador's book, we can see all the examples. May mga magagandang example diyan who are actually making a difference.
Yes.
So, it's not impossible Maghanap din tayo na magagawa natin within our sphere, within our control.
Yes.
Thank you for your insights. Yes, Sir Raul, you have.
Yeah, I'd just like to repeat, in a sense, Professor Poblador's point. No? In an informational society, in the new information society, we need informed workers. We need highly motivated workers, creative, who have who can adapt things, because the world is changing so rapidly. So of course, these workers have to have to be properly compensated. I mean, following Alvin, okay, you can make profit, but share the profit so the workers also profit. Yeah, I think that's the whole point of Poblador's book. No? Not just the owners, but the stakeholders. Stakeholders means workers, suppliers, competitors, everyone. And that's the only way that the business will survive. Otherwise, mawala silang mangyayari kasi the world is changing so rapidly. We have to change with the world. Hindi na pwede yung dating people are told what to do. No, workers have to be able to anticipate change, anticipate responses. No, yeah, that's what I want to say. Okay.
Thank you.
I make a small qualification, a very small one. In my book, I do not advocate firms to share their profit with everybody else. As a matter of fact, I urge them to make as much profit as they can. But they can only do so by sharing resources with all their stakeholders, with their consumers. Give them more value for their money. They will come back to you and buy your products and services. They will generate revenue for you, making you more profitable. Pay your workers well, educate them, train them, give them the knowledge and skills necessary to be productive. They will repay you by being more productive. You will be more cost effective. You will be more profitable. In other words, it is not making big money and then sharing it with others. It is sharing with others and then making big money. I wonder if the logic is clear.
Yeah, it's a logic. Generosity. Generosity is productive. Yan ang sinasabi niya.
And
may mga companies who are doing it.
Being generous to others is being, in the manner of speaking, being selfish. Because, right? You have your own self-interest in mind. Ganon din ang mga negosyante. They are generous to their workers and to their consumers, not because they are, they are generous per se, but because they have an ulterior motive. They want to be more profitable.
Yan ang the good one. Hindi lahat ganoon, ha? Hindi lahat ganoon. So we encourage the good ones and we don't patronize the bad ones.
Kaya tama si Friedman, Mahar. Tama si Friedman. The business of business is to make profits.
Yeah, but you make it by being more generous. Hindi ka nanakawan ng mga workers mo, ng mga consumers mo.
Correct.
That's what you're trying to, in the long run, in the long run, you give value and the value will come back. And you have to be imaginative and think of how to do that.
Right. Kasi karamihan sa mga negosyante, masyado silang focused on immediate
akala nila short term lang. In and out. Yes.
Thank you po. How I wish na papapanood din tayo ng mga young entrepreneurs natin today, na sana may adapt na nila to. So
we don't know how to be entrepreneurs.
By years or
sana naging businessmen kami lahat.
Sana years after this discussion, ma-i-adapt nila kung ano man yung mga idea na pinresent ni Sir Nick sa kanyang libro. The third question came from Cyril Noronha. Would businesses that are considered to have negative impacts on the environment, such as fossil fuel and plastic, would they have a place in this new age of capitalism? In the businesses that are focused on fossil fuels and plastic, do you think they have a place in this new age of capitalism?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then the next question pala is again election related dahil this would be a major shift for us Filipinos when after elections po, no? Foreign investors will make decisions depending on the result of the upcoming elections. Hindi naman po lingid sa kaalaman natin itong statement na ito, no? How may we be affected by this? What can our businesses and government do? This is from Maylene Soriano. Thank you, Maylene. Again, foreign investors will make decisions depending on the result of the upcoming elections. How may we be affected by this? And what can our businesses and the government do?
I think personally, foreign businesses will still invest in the country. Why? Because we have a young population, and when you have a young population, maraming bagay na binibili na kailangan ng isang young population. And regardless of who sits at the top, I don't think na mag-iiba yung, kasi hindi naman sila, they're not part of our politics here. So they are apolitical when it comes to this. Hindi naman sila kakampi sa kandidato na ito o sa kabilang kandidato o kung sino man ang kandidato. Ang kandidato nila, yung business nila eh. So ang titingnan nila, yung mga policy ba na ilalagay o ipagpapatuloy ng uupo ay favorable sa kanilang negosyo. At yun ang magiging dahilan ng decision nila whether to proceed or not to proceed or to remain if they are already in the country. No? So I don't think na kung sino man ang uupo ay magtatakbuhan sila palabas kung hindi nila favorite yung uupo. Or kung favorite nila yung uupo ay magtatakbuhan naman sila papasok ng Pilipinas.
Okay, thank you, Sir Alvin. No? Again, our sixth question again came from Acid Egg. How can our local industry prosper? For example, in agriculture, if we do not imply restrictions in importation and exportation, how can we compete with international corporations?
Mahar, I think you have something to say about this.
Don't be discouraged. Why do you always think about that na parang ang hina-hina natin? Use your imagination, use your knowledge. You know? Maghanap kayo ng paraan para magkapag-compete. Don't have this attitude na basta mahina tayo, mas malakas sila, so wala tayong magagawa.
Oo nga.
Mag-isip kayo ng paraan. Di ba? You cannot fix it from one book or something like that. You know? Mag-isip kayo. Basta do not ever get discouraged. You know?
Well, I think we have to invest in education and training.
Yes, that's normal. Like anytime. Yeah, that's right.
Actually, that is the beauty of the book. It offers strategies. So it's up to the people if you're going to use those strategies. But it's here. It's presented. Nasa sa inyo na yun.
Do not look for a favor in order to improve yourself.
Yes, correct.
Do not look for a restriction from the government na sana may ganito para special para sa akin. Then I will be successful. Yan ang very, very temporary. Hindi yan isang mga paraan para lumaganap. Don't look for a favor. Don't look for a special restriction or a special gift or a rule or something like that na para sa iyo lang ito, ganon. Don't do that because it will bound not to last. People will see, para sa iyo lang yun, para sa ganito lang yan.
Oh.
It's got to be broad, generous sa lahat. Don't look for something selfish. Precisely,
Thank you, Sir Mahar and Sir Nick. The next question is from Rose Enriquez. There is an agreement that companies can be both focused on wealth maximization and enrichment and economical interests of the workers and stakeholders. However, this requires radical change in the profit objectives of these businesses. As part of the public or the working sector, how can we spark this change and influence these companies?
my book is very clear on this. There is no need really for the state, for the government to induce business or to encourage business to engage in productive activity. Profit is the motivator. If you have an opportunity to make profits, to make money, to create wealth for your shareholders, you will go into business. The thing is that, again, at the cost of being too repetitive, my idea is not to change the way we seek profit, not to rethink profit as a motivator, but rather to rethink the way we make profits. Ang nakagawian kasi natin, mga negosyante, tulad na nasabi ko kanina, is we make profit at the expense of others. Yung mga competitive strategies na sinasabi, which are focused on immediate returns, is in the language of economics, a zero-sum game. What the firm gains, everybody else loses. It is that way. Kaya there is no opportunity to enlarge the productive capacity of the business enterprise. This can only be done by improving the productive capacity of all stakeholders. Lalo na yung mga workers. Bigyan sila ng kaalaman. For example, in the knowledge economy, knowledge is the most important resource. Give this to your workers, they will be more productive, and your firm will be more profitable. Continue to seek profit, but seek profit differently. And that is by sharing resources with others. Dito po mapasok yung sharing, yung generosity. But it is generosity with, again, a long-run ulterior motive. Generosity now to make profits tomorrow.
I think what the tender was pertaining to was the covenant signed by businesses in 2019, 2020. And maybe, hindi lang naman po ito up to the businesses. I disagree na exclusive yung businesses in the government. Of course, in everything else, there's an element of governance. So there are many things, for example, students and small business startups that are beyond their control. So, syempre may element din po ito ng governance. So, I think if some businesses could sign that covenant, shared values, then I think, baka may factor din na the government can do its part in mandating.
Correct.
It cannot just be exclusive to the businesses. May governance side pa rin. So, in that sense, so, ayan, election related, we should also elect leaders who have knowledge on this so that they can be part of the solution. Hindi exclusive yung business sa government. Ayun po.
Okay, thank you, Sir Nick and Ms. Sinsay. Actually, meron po kong sunod na tanong. Since I was an educator before I became a writer, I can see the current education system natin na grooming. There are factors na sinasabi din, this is from the parents that I used to talk to, na we are grooming children to become a yes men, become complacent, na umuo na lang. And yung merong mga tawag dito, merong mga usapan na ibabalik yung ROTC and so on and so forth. And meron mga feedback na that would just make your future workforce or future people na maging robotic yung behavior, na umuo na lang, follow orders, and don't be creative, kaya na namin to, umuo na lang kayo. So, what do you think should change in the education natin, yung sa instruction natin? This question is for Ms. Sinsay. To ensure na mas creative and mas valuable yung product ng schools, universities natin to be part of this new age.
I think what we have to focus on, we're working on it actually in education policy research. We have to form our students as critical thinkers first and foremost. So we have to invest not just in hard sciences and math, but we also have to invest in social sciences. So history, the arts, it's not what we see as profitable, but it's what makes people, students, as critical thinkers. In that way, they have the blueprint to become more productive, to be more creative, and more innovative. Kasi isa yan sa mga, kumbaga, collaterals ng capitalist society. Nasa-suppress yung creativity if we focus solely on profit. So if we have to reform the education, then we can focus more on the arts, on critical thinking. Kasi medyo STEM-related tayo ngayon, math and grind. So for me as a teacher, there are subjects like media and information literacy, we have 21st century in senior high school. So those are the subjects that we don't just emphasize to students na minor. We have to give equal importance to all. Kaya nga sila core subjects in the curriculum. So it's really up to the educators how to implement the value of those subjects. So that lahat ng core subjects, not just the hard sciences, the math, also the humanities and the arts, lahat sila na-develop sa students.
Okay, I think that would be our last question. Once again, I would like to thank everyone, especially Sir Nick, for this wonderful book that we have discussed for today. And I would like to thank our panelists, Sir Mahar K. Mangahas, Sir Alvin Buenaventura, Miss Leymorus Sinsay, and Sir Raul Pertiera for this very productive and very insightful discussion. Strategy in the new age of capitalism, collaborative and inclusive approaches to value creation by Niceto Poblador is available on the UP Press online store and on Lazada and Shopee. Get your copies through the links in the caption and comments of our live stream. Once again, this ends our 11th Interdisciplinary Book Forum. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for participating from Facebook to our from our audiences to on Facebook to our panelists and to the author or the man of the hour. Once again, congratulations, Likhaan.
Congratulations, Nick.
UPICW, congratulations, Sir Nick.
Nick, my teacher.